Farmers turned out in their numbers, but united behind one message: no farmers, no food, no future.
This is unprecedented to see this in the middle of London. Farmers are here targeting Westminster because they want the government to listen. It might be a slow convoy, but they want change and farm.
There's nothing we can do more, I think, than today being here and to continue demonstrating against Mercosur and against the way they're trying to implement it.
Central London is under siege as enraged farmers, roaring tractors and all, push police to the breaking point. Over 10,000 protesters have filled Parliament Square and Whitehall, their rage erupting as generations of family farms face ruin. The government's death tax has ignited a rebellion that is merciless, unstoppable, and poised to shake the nation to its core.
They brought over 100 tractors to central London. One by one, they left in convoy, British flags flying high.
London's streets erupted into chaos on 19th of November 2024, as over 10,000 farmers poured into Parliament Square and Whitehall. Tractors lined every lane, horns blaring, engines growling like beasts refusing to be tamed. The air was thick with tension, anger practically visible, crackling between the crowds.
It was banned at the 11th hour. It's been planned for 4 weeks or so. Farmers from across the country, from Yorkshire, from Somerset, working with the Met Police to bring about 500 tractors outside Downing Street, angry at, of course, the inheritance tax reforms announced in the budget last year.
Farmers shouted, "Hands off our farms!" and their voices carried across the heart of the capital. This was no ordinary protest. It wasn't noise. It was fury made physical. A warning that the people who feed Britain were done being pushed around. The so-called death tax had lit a fuse, and the flames were spreading fast. Generations of families, farms handed down over decades, were under threat, and this was their stand.
More farmers descend on Westminster. The scale of discontent is clear, a warning of increasing food insecurity.
The death tax isn't a catchy headline. It's a brutal, soul-crushing reality. Under the new inheritance tax rules, announced in the late 2024 budget by Chancellor Rachel Reeves, full relief applied only to the first $1 million of agricultural assets. Beyond that, relief drops to 50%, meaning heirs of farms worth over £1 million could suddenly face a 20% tax. For farmers surviving on profit margins less than 1%, this wasn't just unfair, it was existential. Entire family farms could vanish overnight if heirs were forced to sell land to pay the government. Critics quickly nicknamed it the tractor tax because it hit rural Britain where it hurt most, directly at the heart of the farms feeding the nation.
Farming is important for the whole world. It supplies you food. You need them 3 times a day for your lunch, your dinner, and your breakfast, basically. All your drink, all your vegetables, everything you get comes from farming.
Lining Whitehall.
The first wave of anger hit London with unrelenting force. On 19th of November 2024, the streets were packed with farmers who had left everything behind to make a statement. Small and large tractors blocked thoroughfares, while crowds surged through Parliament Square, chanting, shouting, some even in tears. Police scrambled, unprepared for the sheer scale. The government had assumed this would be a quiet, controlled protest. They were catastrophically wrong. Streets became battlefields. Ordinary citizens were confronting authority, not out of politics, but to protect their livelihoods. It was raw and emotional. Decades of sweat, blood, and family history now hanging by a thread because of one policy.
So wrong what she's doing to these young people that are trying to go into farming. They're behind me. It's their livelihoods, it's their jobs. We are working people. I fed the cattle and came up here today.
By 11 December 2024, tensions had escalated. Farmers organized tractor convoys attempting to push into central London, only to be redirected by police off major roads. Each blockade sparked shouting, frustration, and outrage. The anger wasn't slowing, it was boiling over. Families who had tilled the land for generations were face to face with officers in riot gear, the message crystal clear. The fight for survival was on. These weren't random acts of defiance. These were desperate measures by people cornered by policy and circumstance.
Mark Spencer says we firmly back our farmers. British farming is at the heart of British trade, and we put agriculture at the forefront of any deals we negotiate.
The crescendo arrived on Budget Day, November 2025. Hundreds of tractors were poised to storm Westminster, but police barred entry at the last minute. Streets that were meant to host peaceful demonstrations became flashpoints of fury. Arrests were made near Trafalgar Square, escalating anger to almost unbearable levels. London, already tense, was paralyzed. Public transport halted. Commuters trapped. The confrontation between farmers and police became a brutal, almost cinematic struggle. Muddy tractors against uniformed officers. Desperate farmers defending the legacy of their land against authorities determined to enforce control.
This isn't the end. Organiser Liz Bates says there's more to come.
Yes, we will be doing more protests or demos, rallies here in Westminster and locally in other towns and cities across the country.
Behind the chaos were real human stakes. Multi-generational farms, the lifeblood of rural Britain, were at risk. Children could inherit debt instead of land. Dreams built over decades could vanish because of a number on a page. Farmers who spent their entire lives feeding a nation now faced losing everything they had worked for. The anger was personal, palpable, and relentless. This wasn't just about money. It was survival, identity, and justice.
Stuff that we can produce here with better quality, with less pharmaceutical products, products that are forbidden here but are allowed over there.
The scale of this rebellion was staggering. Over 10,000 participants jammed the streets, and the National Farmers Union mobilized 1-800 members to lobby MPs. That's just the tip of the iceberg compared to the tidal wave of farmers blocking streets, defying orders, refusing to leave. London became a battleground not for politics, but for the future of families, traditions, and livelihoods nurtured over generations. Tractors filled every lane, crowds shouted until their voices cracked, and police in riot gear tried to keep order. The city was paralyzed, tension so thick it could be sliced with a knife.
Because we're determined to put pressure on the MPs.
This protest has brought the countryside to London. It might have been a slow convoy, but farmers want change, and fast.
The aftermath of these events sent a chilling message. The government expected protests, but not like this. Farmers had shown threats to their livelihoods would not be ignored. London's chaos was a warning. Policies that disregard the people who feed the nation have consequences, and the fury wasn't going away. Streets may have emptied, but anger simmered, ready to boil over again. The death tax had ignited a fire that could reshape rural Britain, and the country had just glimpsed the raw, brutal reality of what happens when ordinary people are pushed to the edge.
And came up here today. We were let know at the last minute. The police told us last night at gone 5 o'clock we could not come today. We have come today. We could not stop everybody coming. We've tried. It is a peaceful demonstration.
The rebellion's scale was unprecedented. At its peak, over 10,000 farmers roamed the streets, not just protesting, but claiming space and demanding survival. 10,000 isn't a crowd. It's an army armed with tractors, banners, and a fury capable of overwhelming anyone in its path. The NFU's 1-800 lobbyists were dwarfed by this human tide, like a single rowboat trying to hold back a storm surge. It's a scene that would make any politician shiver, realizing Pandora's box had been opened, and this time, Pandora came barreling down Whitehall on a tractor.
A different flag or a different thing, you would have let us into Parliament, Rachel Reeves. What is your problem with farmers feeding the country people of this country with English food? Why are you...
The stakes were brutal. Farms over $1 million were suddenly under a 20% inheritance tax, and with profit margins under 1%, even a small misstep could spell doom. Decades of sweat and soil risked vanishing into government coffers overnight. The imagery was stark. Small, stubborn tractors pushing against towering bureaucratic machinery. David versus Goliath, mud and sweat versus a clipboard and policy handbook. And London felt it. Streets clogged, Parliament Square overrun, Whitehall paralyzed. Police moves meant to contain the chaos, redirecting tractors, blocking convoys, only fueled anger. Every redirection, every barrier was another spark for fury. Arrests near Trafalgar Square didn't calm crowds. They ignited them further. Farmers shouted, waved fists, refused to back down. The Capitol became a pressure cooker vibrating with tension, raw, electric, unstoppable.
The farm at the moment is there's no need for our pork because we're bringing it in from other countries, and because we're processing it in UK, when it comes to supermarkets, putting it down as British product and the Union Jack flag. So the consumers who don't know any different think it's made in Britain, and it's not.
Headlines screamed, "London in chaos," and they weren't exaggerating. Behind the chaos were ordinary farmers, people who had spent decades feeding a nation, fighting not for politics, but simply to survive. Fear, frustration, betrayal, these were the emotions that propelled them. Every tractor, every shout was a declaration. We will not be pushed aside, not now, not ever.
Why are you bringing it from abroad? Why are you stifling the agricultural community?
The human cost was staggering. These weren't faceless mobs. They were families with everything on the line. Multi-generational farms were on the brink. Children might inherit debt instead of land. Families who had labored for decades faced losing their legacy overnight. Dreams shattered. Trust broken. Anger that had been bottled for years finally erupted. Even amidst chaos, farmers tried to organize, but the system seemed designed to frustrate every attempt. It wasn't just policy, it was war. War on families, on traditions, on livelihoods. The aftermath of the November 2025 Budget Day protests made this painfully clear. Streets cleared, but smoke lingered. Anger simmered. Farmers were regrouping, planning, ready for the next wave. The government had been warned. Push too hard, and this is not just a protest. It's a ticking powder keg, ready to explode bigger and more violently than before. London sent a message that was blunt, brutal, impossible to misread. If the government thinks it can steal family farms with a pen and a tax code, London had already shown the cost. Raw, shocking, merciless. And it's only the beginning. Farmers have made it clear the fight is far from over. The streets of the capital will not forget the fury, the betrayal, or the determination of those who refuse to lose everything they've built. What happens next could shake the UK like nothing anyone has seen before. Families desperate, anger boiling, machines, literal and metaphorical, moving forward. The city survived one wave, but the rebellion has only just begun. Streets may clear, but the outrage, the betrayal, and the resolve of those who refuse to surrender cannot be cleared. And that, more than any statistic, more than any headline, is the story that will not be forgotten.